Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the October 19th, 2017 meeting of the Downtown Design Review Committee. First order of business, as always, please be sure that your cell phone is turned off or silenced, and we will start with roll call.
Corey Bates.
Present.
Nathaniel Harding.
Present.
Charles Ainsworth.
Present.
Anthony Black.
Present.
Betsy Brunstetter.
Present.
Julie Kriegel.
Present.
Connie Scothorn.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Assuming everyone has had a chance to review the minutes from last meeting, do we have a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
That was Ainsworth Harding motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We have no cases withdrawn. We have no continuance requests. We have no items on the consent docket. So moving right along to cases for individual consideration, I'd like to rearrange, shift the order of these, moving items C and D to the front. So we will begin with item 6C, 401 North Harvey Avenue. Is the applicant present? Please come up.
Good morning.
Good morning. We'll have staff present
Okay, that's
the project, and then we'll go from there.
This is a request from ONG. They need to put in an emergency generator. They basically operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and so they need to have power. Their proposal is to put the emergency generator, you can see the red arrow, back over in this corner of the parking lot where they have, so that it's not out next to the street. Additionally, there's a requirement that they have to screen the entire piece of equipment. To screen the entire piece of equipment, they're taller than what's allowed in our fencing regulations. So they need to get a variance for the height. The material they want to use is a metal, and which is similar to this, and so they also need a variance for that material. And as I stated earlier, it's not up next to the street; it's back in the parking lot. So, in the staff report, pointed out the sections where it talked about the maximum height is 8 foot, and then they're requesting 10'3". In talking with them, we told them that we, either fencing it the whole way or having an 8-foot fence in it above it, either way would probably work in this scenario. They preferred to actually screen the whole thing, so it looks all uniform. What you have in the recommendation, obviously you need 2 votes since it needs a variance, and it's on the Board of Adjustment agenda this afternoon. So staff is recommending approval with the condition that the applicant obtain a variance from the Board of Adjustment from the maximum height and the materials requirements for side and rear yard fences, and then a subsequent motion would be to provide a recommendation to the Board of Adjustment for those variances needed to do that for the maximum height and the materials requirement.
Great. Thank you. Would you like to add anything?
No, she pretty well covered it.
Okay, great. Do we have any questions from the committee?
a real quick question, Laura. So we have a requirement to cover the entire mechanical piece of that, or hide.
It is supposed to be. That's how it's worded, and you've actually had other requests before you that have been in a situation where they have needed to get a variance because the code requires it to be screened all the way to the top, and if all the way to the top is 10 feet, it's too tall.
Some of those generators are really large.
Yes.
Okay.
And unfortunately, they don't, their building isn't designed so they can tuck it in and it's totally, because the other option is if it's not visible, they might be able to totally, they wouldn't have to screen it, and they don't have that option here with the building layout.
Okay, thanks.
Does anyone from the gallery have any comments, questions? I appreciate the location, really tucking it back in the corner, certainly behind parking as well. When cars are there, that'll screen it even more.
Yes, sir.
Can I make a motion?
By all means.
Anybody have a problem with that? Okay. I move to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design Review zoning ordinance as referenced in Section C and D of the staff report, with the condition that the applicant shall obtain a variance from the Board of Adjustment for the maximum height and materials requirement for the side and rear yard fences.
That was a Brunstetter-Kriegel motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
And in addition to that, I would like to recommend approval to the Board of Adjustment for a variance for the maximum height and materials required for side and rear yard fences.
We have a second?
Second.
That was a Brunstetter-Harding motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Thank you.
Application is passed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 6D, 2 Northwest 11th Street. Is the applicant present?
Yes, they're here. Several years ago, when some of you were on this committee, you had a request before you, this was actually in 2014, to construct, at the time they called it a temporary structure, which is the containers where the Contemporary is currently located, which is south of the new site that you approved several months ago. As a condition of that approval, it was to be removed by the end of this year, and they needed variances from the Board of Adjustment, and one of their conditions was that it be removed by the end of this year. So they have actually come back before you with an new application because they've decided they really want to leave those structures, which is you have one that's vertical and you have 3 that are horizontal. They will need the same variances they needed before, which dealt with setback, everything that's applied here. And there's also some guidelines that we referenced in the staff report that they don't meet the letter of intent of those guidelines. They're not proposing anything different than what you see on the screen. So unlike other projects, you actually know what this looks like. And so staff is recommending approval with conditions that we have listed here. They need variance from the Board of Adjustment from the requirement that the first 2 floors of new construction be placed at or within 10 foot of the street right-of-way. The variance shall be limited in scope to only the existing building on the subject site and not to any proposed building on the subject site, nor to any replacement building. You probably haven't seen that before, and the reason is once you get a variance, the variance is for the site. Without that condition, they could actually come in and place more and not have to get a variance for it, and so that is a unique condition that we have in there. The second thing, obviously, you'll need to make a recommendation to the Board of Adjustment for a variance from the requirement that the first 2 floors be at or within 10 foot of the street right-of-way.
Great. Would you like to add anything? If so, could you start by stating your name for the record?
Sure. Yeah. Sure. My name is Todd Edmonds. I'm a principal with HSE Architects. I was the original architect on this building about 3 years ago when we first constructed it. And at that time, we did ask for a variance that would expire at the end of this year. With the initial intent of this structure was to help with our capital campaign, use it for public awareness so people would identify Oklahoma Contemporary with our new site, and then also help with our capital campaign. We could take potential donors to this location and inform them more about our new building that is going to be built right across the street. Because of certain circumstances, we haven't built the new building yet. The intent was this would be removed at the time that the new building was completed. But if you've been by there, you notice that we haven't even started the building yet. It is scheduled to start the first quarter of next year. We're waiting on some tax credits that could amount to a significant amount of money towards our campaign, so it's worth the wait, and that is why we haven't built the building yet. So we would love for this structure to remain because we are still in our capital campaign phase, and we would like for it to remain until the till the new building is completed, which was our original intent. But there is such a desire and a popularity of this structure that we would like it to remain. It was built as a permanent structure, not a temporary structure. Even though we had originally intended to remove it, it is still built according to all of the city codes and has permanent foundations and permanent structures. So, and if you've seen the building, and the pictures that are in the application don't really do it justice, but you know, it's more of a sculptural, artistic feature more than it is a building. And it is very functional as well. We use it for many events, exhibits on the site currently. So it is very useful to us, so we would hate to see it go away. And of course, it costs a lot of money to build, so we'd hate to just tear it down and throw it away. So unless you have any questions, that's really all I have to share.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee?
Well, I guess I have questions. I can certainly understand why you'd want to keep the building until the new building is built, but what would be the purpose of the building afterwards?
It would really serve the same purpose that it is right now, except for the capital campaign portion of it. On the first floor, we have an office, we have a small library where anyone in the public can come by, grab an art book or a periodical, sit down, read it. There's also a small retail store selling art and jewelry on the first floor, and then we also use the upper container for some small exhibits where they're either video exhibits or art exhibits, which is open to the public. And then some of these other events that I mentioned earlier, we currently are doing some events called Make and Take, where families, children and their families can come and make a piece of art on a Saturday afternoon and take that with them. When we started these events, and most of that occurs on the lawn around the structure. The structure just kind of creates a hub for the event. But when those started out, we had 40 or 50 people. Now we're up to over 300 people attending those events. And so we would plan to continue events such as that even when the new building is built.
I guess, sorry, I would be the only one asking questions. And my concern is that you're using such a small piece of the site, and that leaves the rest of the site vacant?
Actually, I have a master plan here, if it's okay. Share this. So as you can see in this master plan, the showroom building is in the bottom left-hand corner. It's a very small piece of our actual master plan. The building just to the north across 11th Street is our new Oklahoma Contemporary Arts Center, which is completely designed, and that's what we plan to break ground on at the beginning of next year. So it's really creating a campus atmosphere. We also have, there's an existing building in the back corner of the site that I think is colored in blue, and that will be our industrial arts building, and that will be completed along with the new building on 11th Street. And then there's space there for two future buildings that we have no immediate plans to put in those, but if we ever expand or have other other arts organizations that want to join us on the campus, those are future buildings that could be developed for that. So it's really creating an arts campus. And the showroom is just a small piece of that.
Do we have any other questions from the committee?
Can I make a motion? I didn't get to do this for a really long time, so I'm catching up. Okay, I move to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of Downtown Design District, and thanks for passing out that site plan. It was really cool. As referenced in section C and D of the staff report, with the conditions that the applicant shall obtain approval of a variance from the Board of Adjustment for the requirement that the first 2 floors of new construction be placed within 10 feet of the street right-of-way, and the variance shall be limited in scope to only the existing building on the subject site and not to any other proposed building on the subject site, nor any replacement building should the existing building be demolished or removed.
As a Brunstetter Ainsworth motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
I also move that we provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment for a variance from the requirement that the first 2 floors of construction be placed within 10 feet of the street right-of-way.
As a Brunstetter Ainsworth motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Application is approved.
Great, thank you very much.
Do I need to pass it? Oh, it's on.
Okay, we will now circle back to the top of the items for individual consideration, moving to item 6A, 616 Northwest 5th Street. Is the applicant present?
Yes, he's here.
Okay.
Some of you are new, so you don't remember when this came before you. This was an original electrical, my mind just went blank. Union Hall. And it's located mid-block, 2-story building, and it came through for conversion into a eating, drinking establishment with outdoor activity areas. And there's a parking lot adjacent to it on the west side. At the time it was approved, as outlined in the staff report, there were some specific conditions, and one of those conditions dealt with, and let me get down to the site plan. One of those conditions dealt with the area that was south of the Airstream. The Airstream is right here, so it dealt with this area. And we had a request, and you have at your place a copy of the original site plan, and on the back side of that was the elevations that were approved, which shows the fencing that they were approved to put in that at that location. So let me go back to the pictures. They are coming in with a request for a revision. This was spurred on. They were unaware that they needed to get a permit for this structure that you see here, which is the starting of the structure, and they want to put a roof over to cover outdoor seating area. They stopped right away. They came in to meet with us, filed the application for revision, which is what you're considering today. So the request for revision deals with this covered pergola, as they're calling it, and they want to put, on the top of that, they want to put the same roofing material that was approved for the restroom addition that you see to the right here, and that's the addition that they were approved previously. The other thing that they are requesting today is, you can see the Airstream trailer, and so what I'm looking at here is the area south of the Airstream trailer, where they're also requesting this bench seating that you can see that's been constructed here. The trees that were part of that condition of approval before aren't there. They use this, what is that called?
Cornhole.
Cornhole competitions. Sorry, I've not. I do washers. If it's similar to washers, I know what that is. But and so you see a picture here of the bench seating, which is immediately adjacent to the fence that's on the south property line, which is adjacent to the alley. So you have immediately adjacent to it, and I'm sorry, these pictures are so dark, across the alley, there's a very large portion of that piece of the half block that's vacant. But you do have down at the east end, and you have Mr. Price is here. His house has been completed. It wasn't completed last year, and his family lives there. And then there's also a structure that is a commercial residential structure that was renovated that is also across the alley from this site. So staff recommendation, we pointed out the areas for discussion, and staff's opinion, it does meet the guidelines and the regulations, and we're recommending approval. So this is Lee Morris, who is the new operator. There are different people involved in the project from when you guys saw it before.
Before we get into the new scope as part of this application, how do we deal with scope that was in the original CA that has not been completed, and based on what we're looking at, does not look to be completed?
And let me go to a picture so I can. I believe you're referring to the fence. Our CAs, they're not required to. They didn't even have to do this at all.
They didn't have to do what?
They didn't have to do this project. When they get a CA, that doesn't impel them to do A, B, C, and D.
Right, I mean, like if your CA is for renovate building, install fence, install fire pit, unless one of those items is required for screening or was a specific condition, you don't have to, if you get a CA to replace the windows, you don't have to replace the windows.
Well, but
if you do, they have to be replaced in compliance, unless these things were a specific condition.
if the work that was done differs from what was shown and approved.
And that's a separate thing. And let me talk about both of those things. I brought this up. I put this picture. There is a segment of the fence that has not been installed, which is on the east side, and we're looking at it here. And I asked when I was meeting with the contractor about that, and their intent is they do want to complete that fence. Their CA is still active. Their CA is active for 2 years. So they literally had 2 years, even if it had been a condition, but...
Right, they can't be cited for not installing the rest of that because they still have a full year.
Okay.
So, were the trees a condition?
And so, from that perspective, and they've indicated that is their intent, that's what they want to do. Okay. So the second thing that you asked me was, what if they had a condition? For example, they had a condition that they were supposed to literally block off south of the ramp of the Airstream trailer, south,
right,
to the south property line. They were not to use that area.
Right.
Okay. So what they've done is they're submitting a request to revise their original approval. They're asking for permission to use that area. Yes, they've already done improvements there, but you're supposed to look at this as though they haven't. So in other words, don't take that into consideration, because if you decide, no, we don't want them to use it, we want it to look like, the same condition from before, and you want to be specific, and you want to say, do not use this, plant the trees, put a fence, blah, 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 then that would compel them, by the time the CA expires, to remove any improvements that they've done in there and plant the trees and block it off with a fence. Does that answer the question?
I believe it does.
Okay.
So the items that I see as pertinent to that discussion are the physical barrier at the south side of the Airstream. That was certainly a major topic of conversation in the last meeting, and it became a condition of the motion for approval based on the discussion of the whole group, where the applicant came back and said, yes, we will put that in. The trees on the south side, those were part of the original application that was approved that differ here. And I'll point out as well that the original drawing, and actually the drawing that's in front of us today at the dumpster enclosure, shows the gate on the east side of the dumpster enclosure.
Oh, I missed that, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
I was concentrating on this other, and I didn't
No.
pay attention to that one.
No, the drawings are consistent, but if you go to the site, the gate is actually on the north side of the closure facing the street.
Okay, and let
See, it
me,
hasn't been built as per.
Right. And even this morning, driving by, those gates were wide open and the dumpsters were in clear view.
okay, let me do it, Paula.
So, there's content and then there's details that were included in the original approval that are not playing out as they were approved. And so,
Let me get that up so you can, okay, so you're saying the dumpster enclosure here, which had the opening to the east,
yes.
correct? Versus, and it's not as easy to go back and forth. Okay, so,
So are you saying it faces north now, that opening?
It does face north. It faces 5th Street.
okay. So let me now go back to this one. Okay.
So when we first did this, wasn't a big concern from the south side of this being able to screen that from the buildings that were there, and that's why we were pretty specific about not taking the trees down, that sort of thing? Did I remember that correctly?
My memory is that there was concern about the number of people who would be
Exactly.
using the back patio,
Yes.
and if half of the back of yard was full of trees, then they wouldn't physically be able to use it.
Yeah, because there was not trees
Right,
there.
but now, back to Corey's point, now they are specifically asking to use that back half.
So, and as I might point out, in my conversations with them, there's a new group of people involved in running this establishment. They weren't aware until I told them any of the history of it, because when they took over, they weren't told. They didn't have a copy of what was approved, so they didn't know that there was a very contentious meeting, that we had a lot of people out here speaking. There was a concern over the congregation of a large amount of people, the noise, the music, the lights, I mean, everything for that discussion. And so I told them how to go and actually watch the meeting, since it's out there on the city website, which was, it's very informative for people to be able to see what had occurred. So that's, and I just wanted to tell you that, we did tell them that's where we're coming from here, and that's what you guys are all going to remember.
So we're presented with, in a way, I shouldn't say it this way, but a revised application based on a new user group that would like to use this area differently
Yes.
than what was previously approved.
Right.
Okay. And if this application does not pass, it defaults to the CA that was approved by this
Correct.
committee last year. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
But then they would have the rest of the time frame of that, before the CA expires, to undo, if that's what you decide to do, to undo improvements that they've made.
I have a question about the usage. Can you explain the difference, not having been part of the other meeting? You mentioned, Corey, that it was going to be used differently, I guess. Could you elaborate on that?
Well, according to what was now told to me, that was not supposed to be used basically for any gathering at all, the backside of the Airstream. When I became involved in it, it was being used, and I was not aware that there was an agreement not to use that or part of the plans. So I didn't have any idea that it wasn't supposed to be used as in the initial plans stated. So we would come in and we looked at the area and thought that that is a nice area for what they call cornhole tournaments or cornhole, playing, whatever you want to call it, just enjoying themselves. Kind of like back in my day it was horseshoes, but today it's cornhole. So that's why I'm asking for to be able to keep that what we're doing now.
So if you guys could just help me out here a second. The original applicant, what was their use for all that?
So
Was it strictly a bar?
They were, the major concern with the first application was the number of people, not just people per se, but the activity. How many people were going to be making noise through the night in the backyard? And the committee's solution, in agreement with the applicant at the time, was to limit the area that's available for use, specifically by planting a grove of trees. So there is no room to do cornhole. There is no room to sit and drink.
And a physical barrier as well in the plan that Laura provided.
Yeah, and a fence behind the Airstream.
And if I'm not,
and
originally the Airstream was going the other direction. And so by turning the Airstream perpendicular to the east property line, that helped block off that part. And then so they were supposed to put a fence on the south side of that ramp to the Airstream trailer. So it literally blocked off about a third of it, which could potentially cut down on that many more people that could congregate.
Yeah, I'll also say the original application, it was a patio. That's all. It was patio with some string lights. But now they want to cover the seating, which obviously would encourage more people to use it. There's a fire pit, which would encourage more people to be out there long. You know, I mean, they're a business owner. They're trying to maximize.
And they're also in the process of working with the building permit staff on actually putting a full kitchen in the building.
Okay,
they want to
next
expand the
question.
food aspect of it, because before the food aspect was going to come from the Airstream trailer. And the Airstream trailer had to be put down as a permanent structure. There's no wheels on it. That's required by the building permit they had to get. And that was also a condition of approval. So they're not moving it in and out. It's not a food truck that moves in and out.
So are you the lessee or are you the owner?
I'm the leasee. Yeah. The owner, one of the building owners is here today. Dwayne is here.
So at the last time we reviewed this, we heard a substantial amount of concerns about the use of the space, and the consensus that everyone came to and the approval of the committee included features and items that would restrict that south portion of the site. What today, and with your intended use of the site, alleviates those concerns? You know, my assumption right now would be those concerns that we heard at the last meeting are still relevant.
I would like to address that.
Please.
Kind of thank you for allowing me time to visit on my vision and my request today. I became the majority owner back in the end of July and wasn't a part of the original group, so I wasn't aware of the planning issues and the extent of the concerns that the neighbors around the union had with it. In fact, it wasn't until I started planning on remodeling and adding features to this location to make it more of what my vision is for the union did I discover the extent of the issues. I have met with two of the neighbors twice in the last 2 weeks and understand their concerns and frustrations with the original owners and how they felt about the place. I have presented them with my plan moving forward, which is really what they were told in the beginning that they were getting. I have pledged to them that my intentions are not to be a source of frustration or more of an asset to the neighborhood, accomplished through good communication and understanding their concerns moving forward, while providing a great place that they can be proud of having in their neighborhood. I am fully aware of the concerns of the noise level at night, and then once my vision is realized, I don't expect that to be a problem going forward. I have already adjusted the time that the acoustic music is being played down to 10 o'clock from 11 o'clock, even though the city ordinance is 11 for that noise. I've actually pushed it back, and it was a little difficult to get my employees to understand the importance of that, but it's in full effect now. My vision is to have the same type of operation that I currently do. I have been the operator of the Deep Deuce Grill for the last 8 years. And I don't know if you know where it is or how it operates. That's the type of operation I perceive to move to the union to. More of a, vision of you sit down, relaxed atmosphere, have a drink, enjoy a meal, visit with your friends, watch a game on TV if you like, maybe a little bit of acoustic music from time to time, but nothing crazy outlandish. The demographics that I'm going after are totally different from what the original group was going after. Along with my request today, I'm also have already submitted plans and waiting for finalization on the kitchen to realize the fact that it is going to be a restaurant and not just a bar, which is what the contention is today, that it's more of a bar instead of a restaurant. I want to change that. That's not what I do. We're also trying to be a restaurant-themed environment where it wasn't before. It was more based on bar. And when I took it over, my first thought was we need to put a full kitchen in here. So I want to make it a kitchen. I want to make it a place where people can come and have a lunch. We're going to change our hours so we could be open for lunch for people to come enjoy our food at lunchtime. Come back after a hard day of work and have a nightcap or enjoy a meal, talk to some friends, just like I have at the Deep Deuce now. That's my vision, and that's why I think it'll be a totally different set of people that will be coming to our establishment.
Could you state again when you took over operations?
The end of July.
Okay, and you have been operating the establishment since then?
Yes. Okay. I took over complete operations probably actually August 1st.
Okay, but it's been functioning since then?
Slightly. Not as well as I'd like because I'm in the plan. I actually have my vision. I'm trying to get it started and get all the plans and building. I was already, obviously, before I knew about that I needed a permit for the covered patio, we were already working that way to change the whole dynamics of the place.
Do we have any other questions for the applicant?
We have at least one person, I believe, in the audience that wants to speak. I just wanted to make sure we didn't.
I have a quick question. So your covered patio, the section I'm looking at of your covered patio, on the east side of it, doesn't actually show this, on the east side of it, does it actually come directly up to the fence and close off, or what's
to the east side where the chain link fence is now?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we're going to make that continue with the regular fence line the way it was intended to be done. Don't know why it wasn't done in the first place. It looked ugly to me anyway. So I want to fix it to make it more aesthetically pleasing.
Were you asking if the roof is going all the way over to the fence and if it's connecting?
Right.
Good. I don't know what height that the roof is as in relationship to how tall the fence is. The fence was...
The pergola is 10 feet.
And the fence is showing 8'6".
So
Okay.
they'll be...
Because, yeah, that's...
All righty. That was my question.
Can I address the dumpster issue?
Please.
I wasn't aware of it, but I do see why the original plans had it coming from one way and they had to change it to the other because they couldn't get their truck in to pick up the dumpster. The trash people said that, it had to come from this way or they couldn't get it out, which is the side of the parking lot. The way of the original plans, it didn't give them enough room to get it out. They, I guess they just said, hey, can you please put it there, is what I was told.
And we can address that one of two ways. One is they can come back to me after this all gets resolved and we can just do a subsequent staff-approved revision so that it reflects how the dumpster looks, or you can include that today or not. that's really up to you. But either way, we'll get that addressed. It's probably easier to do it as a subsequent revision to address the way that it actually is.
Is there anything operationally to help make sure that those gates are closed at all times? It's not in this purview.
The issue is the alley is for public access. Okay, it's not private.
The dumpster is required to be screened from view.
Okay.
So that's
So
all time. So if I mean,
I'm
the
sorry.
gate is part of that screening.
But
So
it's
the
also
code
a
enforcement.
problem if you drive around town, you see all over,
Yeah, there's lots
dumpsters
of
are in front of their enclosures, and it's an issue with the operation of it and who's picking it up and whether or not they want to get out and put it in and out. But I think Mr. Morris is hearing the concern, and I'm sure it will be a conversation he has with his staff. So that's one of the things that they make sure takes place
Oh, yeah.
every day, that if it's left out, they go out and they make sure it gets put back in.
I've personally had to go and close that gate, so I totally agree with you. I don't feel like it's ugly, but when it's nice and closed, it looks beautiful. It's just a matter of making sure it always gets closed. And I have found that trash guys, they don't lock it back up once they open it up. They get the dumpster, they dump it, they go on, and they don't get out of their truck to put it in there. But I will have that conversation for sure. It's important.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee? Okay, I believe we have some other folks that would like to speak to this issue. Thank you. Please state your name for the record.
Brett Price, and I live at 511 North Dewey, which is the structure shown to the south and the east of the subject property. I do appreciate taking the time for everybody to get up to speed. Obviously, there was a lot of conversations last time this was in front of you, and I appreciate taking that 5 minutes out of my speech. Our frustrations last time were fears of what we were afraid was coming, and unfortunately, that's exactly what's happened. We sat down with the previous owner, and I do realize there's a new owner. We have met with him twice, and I'll get to that. We sat down with the previous owners with no more than probably half a dozen times with our council person, neighborhood, people in the neighborhood. The whole neighborhood came together and met with them, and it was promised to us that it was going to be a family-friendly restaurant. And to go back to your point, just so we're clear, it's an ABC2, which is a restaurant with a bar, and clearly that's not how they've been operating it. So the night they opened, they had a band. They promised all of us, including in front of our councilperson, they would not have any bands. They had a band. They continue to have bands every Friday and Saturday, sometimes on Thursdays. They didn't have a working kitchen. That's been a current and ongoing theme throughout it. They don't offer food some of the time. They have bouncers working all the doors, so unless your family is 21 or over, they're not getting in. So that's just just to bring you up to speed, some of the pieces that were left out. That's what we're still dealing with. All the surrounding property owners had to put up no parking signs because their patrons park on our property. It hasn't stopped them. Bring us up to speed. Yes, we have a new operator. We've met with him a couple times. We're hopeful. He's saying some of the right things, but we're reluctant. Obviously, we've heard that a lot over the year that they've been open. Since he's been operating it, kind of what you said, it's more of the same. I mean, he even admitted, Thursday and Friday and Saturday is when I make my money. It's hard for me to try to turn my crowd over when that's really when I'm making my money. You're right, it was a specific condition due to noise. They actually had 2 2x4s that they put up to block off that area, and they never planted the trees. A week after they opened, they cut them down, put in seating, cornhole tournaments every Thursday night. A lot of times if you get people back there, it's louder than a band because people's voices carry. So that's what we're dealing with. I hope that you take that into consideration and consider keeping in the line where they're not supposed to use it for noise and occupancy concerns for the neighborhood.
I have a question, Brett.
Sure, yeah.
If they had this is where I was going with that, does the fence meet the...
Sure.
If they had a roof over that area, that increases the amount of time that people can be out there, rain, shine. But if the fence met that and could create a little bit of a sound barrier, would that be helpful for you or not? Where would you?
I don't know. I would think so. I'm on the south side. I'm on the side of this patio.
Southeast.
Yeah,
And so the band plays on the east side, which is the closest point to my house. So I'm hopeful that, I'm actually, I think I'm in favor of the canopy just for the fact that it may reduce some noise. I would like it to connect, to hopefully further, reduce some of that noise. Obviously, the canopy and the fire pit, I'll do allow people to use it more times of the year, so, we're going to have bands out there playing more of the year. My main concern is that back area. It's ours. We've talked to him. Unfortunately, he inherited something, and he's trying to get up to speed, and we understand that. But, we met with him, and he said bands are going to stop at, 10 o'clock. Well, 11 o'clock that very night, they were still playing. So, there's still some things that we have some legitimate concerns about.
Mr. Ainsworth, if you look at the aerial, so although his house is not showing up, Mr. Price's house is here at the corner of the alley and Dewey. But and my arrow's doesn't show up, so he's to the east. He's right here.
And then to make it worse, my kids' rooms are actually
on that
closest.
side.
So I curse Jeremy Gardner every day for designing my house closer to that. But.
Well, and at least 2/3 of the block to the south is vacant, so it's all open, so there's nothing to block noise.
Well, and that brings up another point. Obviously, developments have been planned and fallen through. There's development planned for that site. So another thing we're worried about is not only our property value, but what happens in the neighborhood if we continue to have a loud bar in our backyard. We're afraid it's going to hurt everybody's property value. It's going to deter people from wanting to live in a place that has really taken great strides in the last 5 to 10 years.
So is this a design issue or a zoning issue?
If the applicant does not have the proper approvals to do the ABC3, but that is enforced by a whole nother.
It's actually enforced by the state is who determines the over 50%.
On this, and the committee has reviewed other outdoor seating areas. It is a design issue insofar as design elements can help mitigate any adjacency and noise concerns. And size is frequently one of those.
Well, in addition.
But as we discussed at the meeting, the first time this came up, the city has a noise ordinance that is enforced by, I guess, is it the police department that enforces that?
It is the police department, and we've had several break-ins in the area. It's taken the officers over an hour to respond. So calling about a noise ordinance, I just don't think that's...
Well, I'm just saying that...
And they're understaffed, and it's not their fault. But to be getting them involved in this seems like we could do things sooner than calling the police on the noise.
So, because that is an ordinance that we have no direct involvement in. That's...
So we spent a lot of time on this before, and we made some very specific considerations for this project. It seems like those need to be in place, and then you can, and also to see how the new owner responds on it before we should actually act on this.
And I'll be honest, like I said, I met with him twice, and I was the first to tell him, if you are able to turn this around, I'll be the first one to stand in front of you and say, he's done a great job. It's a family-friendly restaurant, just as he sold it to us. And, if he comes up a way where he can use that, and it's not till 2 a.m. like it is now, and people out there being loud, I'll be the first one to stand in front of you and say, he's done everything he said he should do. I think you should let him use it for what he intends. But until somebody shows us that that's how it's going to be, I would hope that you would consider what we've been going through and keep that in place.
Okay.
So is there, I'm sorry.
No. Keep going.
So is there if ABC is not being adhered to, is there not some kind of regulation people?
What I have been told when I inquired about it is that the state is who determines if the over 50% from food has been complied with. Now, legal could in talking with subdivision and zoning staff where people have to file for their ABC3s, that's what I was told, because the city does not make that determination.
That's correct. And right now, Able, not that this helps, but they're not very responsive because they're severely understaffed also. So it sort of compounds the issue.
And obviously, the new liquor laws, they're, just compounds how busy they are. We've run into that quite a bit.
Okay. Chuck, to comment on your question, it can be a design issue, and that's where we got to where we were last time as far as including that barrier to restrict the size of the backyard. Does anyone else in the gallery?
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to this, please? And please be sure to state your name for the record.
Sign in, please.
The name is Dwayne Gibson, and the last name is spelled Gipson. I'm one of the part owners of the facility. Mr. Lee leases the facility from us. The building was purchased back 2003, about 14 years ago. And at the time we purchased the building, I heard the gentleman speak about property values. At the time we purchased the building, there was nothing in the area of value. And as individual owners, we went out there on the weekends and weekdays and cleaned up the area. And for people like Mr. Price could move in and enjoy the benefits that are there now. And so to think that what our property is bringing down the property value, I think that's inaccurate because we didn't do anything but uplift the area because there's been new construction along the north and south boundaries of our property over the past few years. So I think we've been a good advantage to the area. And I think what Mr. Morris is doing when he's taken over is trying to do more communication with the residents and stuff to make sure that we are in the fabric of the community, because we do want an area where everybody is involved and everybody can feel a part of it. We don't want to be a bad neighbor. But what we want, and I'm sure Mr. Price wants this as well, is we want an area that's growing, conducive to making Oklahoma City look good, and we want this part of the downtown to be a mecca for people to want to, I guess, visit, live, and do all other kind of walks of life. And with that being said, the area was originally not a residential area. We're talking about an urban property, and I understand he talked about his kids sleeping and stuff, but we're not talking about a suburban Oklahoma City or Edmond or Moore or Norman. We're talking about downtown Oklahoma City. So you will have a few noises such as trains, trucks, trash trucks, on occasion some music maybe because it is a public area in an urban environment. And so with all that being said, I'm saying we want to be good owners and we want to be a part of the community. And because we've been there since 2003 when we purchased the building, we, first movers advantage. We were there and laid the foundation to clean it up. There was a drug-infested house next to the west of us that we actually purchased, cleaned up the lot, demolished the house, and now that's a clean area. And across the street, I think they're in the process of opening up condos, and Mr. Price is behind us, so the area is continually to grow. And so I would just ask that you give Mr. Morris a chance to do his operation and his vision, and you'll see that it'll become a good part of the community. And if there's any questions or anything as far as with the operation, I would hope individuals like Mr. Price and anybody in the community would come talk to us as owners and also Mr. Morris, the operator, and we'd gladly be able to talk and handle it. And I'll leave it at that, but I appreciate the opportunity to address the board.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Gibson, can you say what's the name of your entity?
It's Oklahoma City Renaissance.
Okay. And Mr. Hughes is
Mr. Hughes is the one that, yeah.
I just want to confirm that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
Hang on just one, I'm sorry.
yeah, please.
Thanks. I just want to kind of go over a couple of things, and Mr. Price has been very forthright, and I totally understand where he's coming from. I don't want to be a thorn in his side. I know things do take time to change and get things turned around. By the mere fact that I have actually willing to put a brand-new kitchen inside the building alludes to the fact that we are changing the dynamics of what we're trying to accomplish. I don't want to be considered a bar. I want to be considered a restaurant with a bar which is what exactly was supposed to happen in the first place. So that is my intention. We are going to be open for lunch. We're not even planning on having late-night people. That's the people that are going out. If anybody's ever been to the Deep Deuce, by 11 o'clock, we're pretty well done. But we have a very great happy hour. People come in for lunch on the weekends where they do, we do brunch. So the different dynamics of the type of person that we're trying to bring in and change to will be very much conducive to the neighborhood. And like I said, Mr. Price has endured some loud music, some people that weren't very considerate of his area, and I'm here to change that. I already gave him my word I'm working that way. These things do take a little time. I have to get it turned around, and the first part is to be able to give somebody something good to look at and come and sit behind. And when we're talking about the patio, it's absolutely correct. One of the biggest concerns of his was the lighting from the patio shines right into his bedroom. Well, once we have the cover on the patio, the lights go underneath the cover, and those lights will not be a burden to him any longer. And I think that's one of his concerns there. As far as the nighttime business, eventually we'll probably only go to maybe one night a week, acoustic, just, try something different like any other bar and restaurant does to bring in people, but I'm not trying to bring in a rowdy late night crowd. That's not my goal, and I want to be part of the community.
Great, thank you.
Can I ask another question?
Please.
Okay, so what is your timeline on your kitchen?
The final plans were presented yesterday to the health department and the city. They said it looks like 8 days is what it takes to get the permit started. I have already purchased a full set of equipment sitting in one of my friend's warehouses waiting to be installed. So I want it yesterday.
So did your contractor give you a timeline on that?
As soon as the permit, they're ready to go. My contractor is extremely thorough and understanding, and he knows. He's been a personal friend of mine for a very long time, so he's taken this on for me to get it done as quickly as possible so I can do what I want to do, make that a nice food establishment.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Is there anyone else in the gallery that would like to speak to this? I'd like to say that, Betsy, I agree with your comment about, where we came to at our last meeting and kind of giving a chance to see that through, and once that's established, potentially revisit this issue. Specific to this application, I have no concerns about the pergola or the fire pit with the concrete pad, but regarding everything south of the Airstream, I would like to see what was agreed upon in our previous meeting actually implemented, the physical barrier to that south lot, and then the trees that were originally planned.
Yeah, I can see the pergola roof be a benefit to address some of these issues, light and sound, and I agree with that as well. With the deck seating, it invites higher utilization, which is what we were trying to. That was the intent of the last conversation, was to try to make this more manageable. So I guess my question is there a way to move this to where we can essentially, one of the applicants willing to maybe pull out a couple of an item and just move forward with the pergola roof?
Yeah, you can. So there's 3 items, 1, A, B, and C: the pergola, the fire pit, and the deck seating. So the committee, if you look on the page 1 of your staff report, so the committee could approve 1A and 1B.
So is B and C in the area? I'm a little confused.
No, if you want to look at that drawing, so the fire pit and the concrete, a little piece of the concrete goes south of the Airstream. Yeah. So there's a little piece of concrete south of the Airstream, but C is really the only thing in that area that you guys are concerned with.
And on C, you could continue it to sometime in the future probably not more than a year, because it expires in a year. Or you could deny it, and they could come back when the kitchen is all done and everything else is in.
And just to clarify, specific to, say, the trees were part of the original approval,
Correct.
but they do not have to necessarily put those in?
In this case, they do because they were conditioned, but they won't be inspected until after September 2018.
Okay.
So they have a full year to put those in.
What? I thought that was from the last time we...
The last approval expires in September 2018. CAs are good for 2 years.
2 years.
Well, it seems like, to me, maybe the current leasee is not aware of how important the sound issue is to the neighbors. To me, the pergola makes a lot of sense. Extending it to the fence makes a lot more sense. But none of the rest of this stuff makes a lot of sense. I mean, if we wanted to have him come back with a plan that might even modify that pergola to make it more soundproof, I would be happy with that. More happy with that than approving a piece of this and a piece of that.
I want to comment first off, Mr. Gibson. I appreciate the improvements you made to the area, and Mr. Morris, I appreciate your plan and your vision. I'm concerned that there's no guarantee that usage of that area is going to stay, and even if it's going to happen as you plan. I don't have a problem with the fire pit. I don't have a problem with the pergola because we want Mr. Morris to succeed and make it successful, and there does need to be some ways that he can maximize the facility. I do have a problem with all the added improvements to the south. I think they need to stick to the original CA on that.
I agree with that.
I think Connie's probably right. It probably wouldn't slow the new leasee down at all to come back with a little bit of an amended application that would maybe seal that pergola to the fence and get the fence in, and maybe remove the seating from the south side of the fence. But I do believe it's going to be most beneficial to see how the space works with the adjustments that we made in the previous application.
Now, on one of those drawings, it showed the fence was 8 foot 6 inches, but that takes into account there's a piece of retaining wall on that east property line, because the maximum height of a fence is 8 feet. So if there is a need for something to connect between the fence and the pergola that you're talking about, we need to really make it part of the pergola, so it's not part of the fence, because I'd really hate to force them to have to get a $1,200 variance to fill that piece in. But I'm sure there is a solution addressing it with the pergola structure versus the fence.
Mr. Morris, would you mind coming back up? Hearing the discussion of the committee, would you be willing to revise this plan and come back with a reapplication? I believe summarizing, looking at the pergola to create even more of an enclosure to contain sound, and then reverting everything from the airstream back to what was in the previous CA.
Yes, I am willing to do what I need to do to make this thing functional and to prove to the neighborhood what my plan is exactly what I plan on doing. I'm a little concerned about what she was talking about, moving that up to match that. So let me kind of get this, to make it all one side, connected, or?
It connected, or there could be a piece that's vertical on the structure for the pergola that goes
Just comes down
south,
from that?
so that it at least meets the top of the fence or kind of goes a little bit further south, just so that it kind of closes it off and to help keep sound, light, all that on the inside versus.
Okay, so if the committee would give me would help me with getting the pergola and the barbecue area done, I will revert back to the backside for now and prove myself, and then come back and ask for a variance to where we want to be at the end. I think that's more than fair, and again, I just want to be part of the community and still want a chance to utilize the outdoors to have a business.
So if this was continued to the October meeting, staff would need updated drawings and...
This is October.
Oh, sorry.
The issue, if we continue it to November, I need everything on a continued case. They literally have almost a week,
Yeah,
which
so-
makes it kind of difficult.
And have the staff look at it?
Yeah,
It should be easy enough.
yeah, I'm good with staff looking at the change to the pergola.
Someone like to take a shot?
I'm a little dizzy here. I move to approve the construction of the covered pergola with steel supports and standing seal metal roof on the condition that the east side of the structure be have a barrier that comes down to meet the fence, and that we approve the installation of the fire pit and concrete, and that we also want the area south of the airstream to meet the conditions that were previously approved.
That was a Ainsworth Kriegel motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? There you go. Thank you.
See you in a couple months, hopefully.
What kind of food is this?
Huh?
When you cook it?
We're going to cook some good food. In fact, I'm actually upscaling it a little bit from my deep deuce menu, so come by and have a meal. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to item 6B, 500 South Robinson Avenue. Is the applicant present?
Yeah, I'll introduce this one. This is while they're setting up, the MAPS 3 Convention Center that you heard a presentation on for informational purposes at the last meeting, and those who were on the committee in the spring also heard one back in April or May. The application is for the main building and the parking lot that's to the south. It's for all of the streetscape, and it's for all of the signage. The staff report is pretty big, and there are a lot of variances noted. I want to introduce it as saying, that's not to say, I think this is a good project. I really do. I think a lot of the variances and issues and considerations are due to the fact that this is a real specialty use, real high impact use on a very specific site, and part of that is what is revealing some of these variances. For example, one of the first variance noted is from the requirement that the building be located at or within 10 feet of the street right away. In the very earliest conversations with the design team, everyone agreed that for a convention center, you need more than 10 feet off the street right away. You need way more. So that's what they've provided on all sides of the building, specifically in the large entry plaza on the west side. So staff believes that's appropriate, but it still technically needs a variance. On the parking lot on the south, parking lots are required to have continuous sidewalks along all street frontages. The design team has agreed to do that, so that's been added as a condition of approval. New parking lots of this size are also required to have internal pedestrian access ways. The design team has agreed to put those in. They didn't have time to get it in for this submittal, so it's been added as a condition. There's a lot of signage. There's some oversized directional signage in the parking lot. There are some oversized signage and combination signage light pylons on the west side and the north side that staff believes are appropriate. So there's a lot of information to be communicated where convention centers are concerned. And I think overall the signage amount is pretty modest given what they're trying to do, but it still is a little over the size and a little over the number that is allowed. So that's wrapping up page 7 of the report. For the dock on the east side, there's some screen walls proposed, perforated metal panels. The committee has reviewed several projects that use very similar perforated metal panels. Because of the size of the east dock, the screen wall is technically a fence because it's freestanding. So it needs, again, back to the previous case on the ONG site, to screen what it needs to screen, the fence needs to be taller than what is technically allowed by the fence regulations. So staff supports that. There are a lot of materials, I know the architect is going to go through those that aren't specifically described in the design guidelines, such as composite wood veneer and precast concrete panels. Like I said, the applicant here in a minute will talk further about those. Because this is a convention center, there's not a lot of glass on the on the north, south, and east facades. The applicant has, they have put some texture on the precast, and there are some openings, but as a use, it doesn't want openings for sunlight and views. Let's see, staff's biggest concern was the encroachment of the Area C stair on the south side of the building into the sidewalk and right-of-way. I think it leaves, at its smallest point, it leaves about almost 7 feet clearance. And sidewalks around the convention center should be at least 10. The applicant will talk about that. Also, we talked about several ways that could be mitigated, so I included that as a condition of approval. That I think everyone's going to regret that in 5 years. What are some other issues? Sidewalks where they cross the loading dock area, they need to be continuous sidewalks. Continuous sidewalks mean instead of dipping down at the drive at the curb cut, they continue across at the same level. And that sounds like a really subtle, minor detail, but that small gesture really prioritizes the pedestrian as opposed to prioritizing the car. So the applicant has agreed to include that too. Some of the streetscape areas on the north and south sides are not in our typical pattern of street trees, sidewalk, and building. Some of the street tree landscaping is moved at the building. On the south side, that's because that's the bus loading zone, and the applicant didn't want buses running into the street trees all day long. On the north side, it's because there's some underground utilities that are dictating where the landscaping can go. Did I get everything? Did I get everything?
You're doing good.
I think the last big element for a review to me is the main entry plaza. There are a lot of seating areas, there are a lot of trees, there are these large lit pylon signage elements, there are some benches, there are some stone seating, there's a lot of stuff going on. I think the applicant has some additional images that weren't included in your packet that show more of the pedestrian experience. Because of the scale of the plaza, it really is difficult to get a handle on just what kind of, spatially, what are we talking about? And is it really too big or too small? But they'll walk through that in some more detail. That is my presentation.
Could you state your name, and the floor is yours.
Yes, I'm Kevin Cook with Populous. I'm the project architect for the new convention center. And with me is Nick Fairless with HFSD Landscape Design. He can chime in on some of the landscape items if we need to get into that. I'm going to give this presentation, and I think some of you have seen this maybe a few times even potentially, so I know there's some new people as well. We'll try to hit everything, but by all means stop me if you have a question as I go through it, if it makes sense, instead of waiting to the end. And I'll just get going here. So the convention center for downtown is basically broken up into three things: a 200,000 square foot exhibit hall, which is the white box, 45,000 square feet of meeting space, which is the green boxes, and then a 30,000 square foot ballroom that's on top, which is the pink box. That program is laid out here. You can see on to the right. The exhibit hall is at grade. Your main entries and pre-function space is along the western facade of the building. That's where Robinson Street is, and where we envision all entries and activity to come into the building. 4th Street is to the north. The east side of the building is the loading dock and service area of the building, and Broadway Street, and then to the south would be 6th Street. So this is basically 2 full blocks for the building at grade. As you go up to level 2, that's where the meeting room level is. There's meeting rooms that are out on the glass and some that are set back along the service corridor, but strictly that level is all meeting space. And then as you move up to the 3rd level, it's kind of a double level use here where we've got meeting rooms at each end, and then the ballroom is situated there on top, facing out over the park with a large balcony and pre-function space. So the site plan here, this image is to show you, because we'll refer to a few different things as I go through this presentation. What you see in white is basically from 4th Street to 6th Street. That's kind of what we've been calling our base bid piece of the project. And everything that's gray, this enhancement to 4th Street, the redo of 6th Street, and the surface parking lot between 6th and 7th, we're including those all as add alternates to the project. So if bids come in favorably, we can hopefully do some of this additional work for the site. The landscape plan here for the building, you can kind of see there's a lot more activity happening on the west side. As Lisa mentioned, the plaza spaces are deep on this side. That's where main entries and people will come in and out of the building. Main entry is here, if you can see my cursor. This is kind of a larger atrium space. We can look at it in a slide or two. You'll see also 4th Street has a lot of activity as far as landscaping, and it's meant to be a nicer pedestrian-friendly space. It's set back a little bit deeper because the future hotel is on the other side of 4th Street, and we envision a lot of pedestrian traffic going through here, as well as we wanted the ability of the exhibit hall to be able to open up onto 4th Street and have some outdoor space if needed. Again, the east side is your service side. That's where trucks and load-ins happen for the building. And then on the south side for 6th Street, it's pretty minimal because the hope is that someday the convention center can expand and that 6th Street would go away and the building would eventually grow to where the future surface parking lot is. So with 6th Street, we tried to keep it a little bit minimalized and knowing that that could be a temporary solution for now. So again, with the plans, I'm just going to highlight this area right here is kind of the main atrium entry. There's another secondary atrium down here at the more southern end, and then there's a drop-off entry here at the very north. So you can see the main use of the building coming in and out of this level. I know it's hard to read some of that stuff, but we can zoom in if you ever need to. And then as you go up, we've got the level 2 meeting room level. You're seeing basically the exhibit hall space. Beyond, you're seeing the upper level of the exhibit hall. Got a mechanical mezzanine level at level 3, and then level 4 is the meeting rooms, kitchen, and ballroom at this level. And then we've got lower roof shaded in gray here, and then the upper roof, which has a very long canopy that reaches out over the building. You'll see in some of the renderings here. So looking at this, this is your view standing on the other side of Robinson Street at the park. You're starting to see the form and shape of the building. This is the meeting rooms that we talked about that reached out onto the reached out to the glass. You can see the southern end here at the other end, and then this is the big balcony and ballroom space here in the middle. This big wedge of glass in the center of the screen is the main atrium entry space. So we've gone through here and we've highlighted some of the materials. I do have samples. If anyone wants to see a specific item, I'm happy to go grab it and get it out here, or we can look at them afterwards if you want to look at anything specifically. But we've got formed metal wall panels here that frame just around the top canopy. We use terracotta around the building. It's a terracotta rain screen. It goes and wraps these north and south meeting room forms where the glass is, and kind of wraps the face of the balcony and the ballroom here. There's precast concrete. We use those as kind of our division pieces between the two meeting rooms and the atriums. Curtain wall and insulated metal panel, basically all on this facade. One thing you'll see here on the underside of the soffits and some of these upper walls, we have the composite wood veneer. That stuff is all at a level that can't be touched. It's all raised up off the first floor, so it's everything's above and below a soffit. Again, you can see the terracotta wrap around the glass here around this portion of the building. And you can start to see some of the metal panel and insulated metal panel that wraps the ballroom space. Here at the south end, again, you're seeing the wood soffit. You're seeing terracotta wrap. You're seeing some small use of plaster on this facade here a little bit, and then there's a corrugated perforated metal panel we use to hide or cover up the open air stairs that you see from the facade or from the west side. That would be the same material we're looking to use on the screens and fences in the loading dock. So you'll see here we've got some screening up top on the building, and then around this whole back side, I know it's kind of hidden by some of the trees, but that's the loading dock area with the screen, the corrugated screen material. The north, east, and south sides of the building are a textured plaster material, and as Lisa stated, the big box of the exhibit hall doesn't really, need windows and lighting in there. They want it to have the ability to have a dark space if needed for different shows and events. So these facades are a little bit simplified in that respect, but the ability to make the streetscape and other things more enhanced help make that a nice area. So a little bit of an aerial view here. You start to see some activity down 4th Street in this view. You start to see some of these plaza spaces from a higher level out in front of the building and the depths that they start to create for people and pedestrians to move through the space. This is your view going north from Robinson Street. You start to look down the facade of the building. One thing I'd point out here would be this is one of our exterior signs on the building. It's a blade sign that has basically stencil cut lettering in it, to where when the sun and the shadow hits it, you can read Oklahoma City Convention Center. It's kind of a unique sign we came up with. And just an overall aerial of this whole area. So with the new downtown park, here's the existing Chesapeake Arena. You start to see where the future hotel would go. This isn't the design, it's just a placeholder. And then our building with a surface parking lot for it to the ability to expand here. So the frontage is great with the huge park there and all the activity this area is going to grow into. Here's the panoramic view standing on the balcony at the ballroom level. Looking out, you can see the Scissortail Bridge way to the south, and you can start to see glimpses of downtown to the north from this view. So we've got some colored elevations here with all the materials. Hopefully you can read them in your packets or on the screen, but we've called out all the materials on these views. If you need to look at them, we can come back to these if there's a question or anything. You start to see the different patterning on the plaster facades with different textures to help make some of these larger facades have a little more depth to them. And then you can see this darker here is the screen wall on the east side, the corrugated metal panel, and it's 11 feet tall, so it's above the required 8-foot height. This is an enlargement here of that shadow sign mounted on the south side of the building. You start to see how we've stencil cut the letters into this, and it's got some thickness to it, so it's got a pretty prominent shape. And then as the sun and the seasons move, that sign will be kind of dynamic on that facade at different times of the day. Another sign is on the east side. You can see it here in the elevation. It's just halo-lit letters, Oklahoma City Convention Center. This is meant to be able to see this from Shields as people are getting off the highway and coming into the city from that side of the building. In the service parking lot alternate, we've got 6 parking directional signs. These are meant to be at the entries to the parking lot, and then here along Robinson we added a couple just to help people understand the in and out and way around to get into the parking lot. Also in the parking spaces we've got signage mounted to the poles, to the light poles, to help people know where they park and remember the area where they parked in. There's a little over 500 spaces, I think, in the parking lot, so it's a fairly large lot when it's being used. Out on the street side of Robinson, out on the west side, we've got 4 of these large signage pylons is what we're calling them, and these have kind of a dual purpose to them. Not only do they're big in the sense that they help advertise the convention center and give wayfinding. They help break up this long 2-block walk here. And these here on the west side, we've even incorporated our lighting on the top of these pylons to help light the underside of the large canopies. If we didn't have these, we'd have to put lights in the ground to help shine up or somewhere on the building, and we thought this was a good solution to help get some of that stuff out of the paving that sometimes has problems and get it on top of the sign. We think it'll look cool that these are being lit and people won't necessarily see the lights where the light is coming from. And then in the alternate, when we have 4th Street, if it gets selected as an alternate in the enhancements of 4th Street, we would add these 3 additional pylon signs. The only thing that's different about these 3 is they actually don't have the lights on top to help light and underside because there's no canopy above them. But we have added these armatures on the sides that will allow some lighting or other things to be added should there be, we've talked about a festival or an art fair or something that could happen in 4th Street between the hotel and the convention center for some event. And we wanted to add the ability to use these for power and other things. So this is a view out front. You're in Robinson Street. Looking back at this, you can see the pylon sign. You can see some of the benches and trees here. The interesting thing here is in plan, these look like long impeding benches kind of, but really what they are, it's a bench and then a tree that's in a walkable tree grate that meets ADA and everything. So when you guys were maybe first reviewing the plans, it looked like these were longer and more obtrusive, but really it's just some seating elements and tree grading in this area. The main entry in this view is here to the left. This is that big atrium space. The doors in the back are can be usable by people, but they're meant more for egress and exiting. But we wanted to create a large entry space that can collect people if needed, but still feel fairly intimate. If it didn't have a lot of things in it, it would be a very large open space and could feel kind of uncomfortable to be in. Again, just a couple views of what this is in, and Lisa, I think, mentioned it in the staff report that there was comments on this earlier about how we had a lot going on in here, and we have gone back and trimmed it out a little bit and made it a little more open. This is looking down Robinson Street, kind of more towards the entry drop-off. Again, you're seeing streets where the trees and stuff along the street side. You're seeing seating and other things to the rest towards the building, and you start to see your pathway through to get down Robinson. This is an image of 4th Street. This is what you're seeing here on the right are the exhibit hall space. We have added some overhead doors here that allow the exhibit hall space if an event wants to open up and put some things out here. We've created this large kind of exhibit plaza is what we've been calling it, where they could open up and have some things out here as part of the show. But again, knowing there's going to be a lot of pedestrian traffic in here, we wanted to enhance this space regardless of the use. This is another view of that. Those 3 additional pylons would show up in this view had the alternate for 4th Street gets picked. We'll add them to this. And then there's a couple, I threw a couple quick interior shots here of what it looks like. This is, to your left is the main atrium space when you come in. We have all our circulation in the atriums that gets you up to each level at both the north atrium and the south atrium areas. So the circulation happens in 2 nodes when you come into the building. You start to see the use of some of the textures, the colors, and the lighting in these views. This is that same atrium space. The entry's down at the bottom. You're at the meeting room level in this view. This is a view at the 3rd floor junior ballroom area. This is one of our meeting spaces at the south end of the building. You can see the windows and stuff that give you views out to the park from this room. And then this is standing inside the new ballroom with the ability to open this wall up and spill out to that balcony and other things. Again, trying to get people to appreciate the view that's outside the window for them. So with that, I'll let the topics go, and we can try to answer any of the specific items that were in the report.
Does anyone have any questions for the applicant?
And I know you've been here before, so if I've missed something and it's been spoken to earlier, you've got a lot of west-facing glass. What's the manner that you're handling both heat gain and brightness?
Okay, so we have very high-performance glazing glass on those west sides. Some of the glazing at certain spots does have a frit pattern added to some of them. It depends on the glass, like up on the atrium walls as you get higher up, has a more dense frit as you go up. But the biggest thing is it's reflective glass. It's got high performance and low E coatings and all that. And the mechanical systems that are associated with the glazing, we thought we would be really upsizing a lot of the mechanical systems for this building because of the potential heat gain. And what we come to find out is that the actual usage of the building, so when a room is full of people, the mechanical systems needed to be that big anyway to take that. So it's all been roughly accounted for in that respect.
And anything with respect to brightness as well? You got people who are coming inside and outside of spaces.
So the brightness on the building, every room has operable motorized shading, so the rooms can be either partially shaded, as in with a transparent fabric inside the rooms, or can be completely blacked out. That's for inside the rooms, inside the space. Again, with the reflective glass, the glare and issues we don't think will be a major issue. The large canopy overhangs we've tested out really do protect a lot of the, it's got to be pretty late in the afternoon, you know, when the sun's so far down in the west. Not to mention we're hoping the park has pretty large trees and other things that's just going to keep, it's going to be a comfortable space.
I have a question about the parking lot. There doesn't seem to appear to be any sidewalks around that?
That was one of the comments from staff report, and yes, we've decided we're going to put the sidewalks around the whole thing on all 4 sides, as well as the internal pedestrian ways throughout it. So that's something we're currently revising and going to resubmit.
Yeah, I added that on the conditions of approval to make sure that was captured.
And what was the 7-foot sidewalk issue that you commented on earlier?
Is that the area C stair? Can you go back to it?
I can.
Yeah, the corner of the building.
I guess the
right
big
here.
site plan is the
That's the edge of the sidewalk.
only place.
So what happened here with this stair?
So we're talking, it's on the lower right of the floor plan.
It's basically here. My mouse going here. This is the pinch point right here that I'm referring to. It's 6'10" right here. Which, what happened here was a couple different things. We obviously shifted the building as far south as we could to help maximize 4th Street's use, pedestrian use. The plans to have open exhibits out there, as well as 4th Street's completely full of utilities, so it helped, that kind of encouraged us to keep moving south anyway. The other idea was that we can utilize the parking lot side, and we think it's safer and a better use of the pedestrian movement to utilize a sidewalk on the south side of 6th Street, get them down to Robinson, and then cross there. So in our mind, this isn't a huge problem if we do go through the effort here, as we said, to put sidewalks around this whole thing, we could look at putting in an even more enhanced or wider sidewalk specifically on this north side of the parking lot to help encourage the people to move through there and not cross over to the convention center side of 6th Street and then have to get past that small pinch point.
What is your position on increasing that pinch point to 10 feet?
It's pretty significant. If we had to do that, we would have to probably move 6th Street, which increases the amount of curb and everything else that would go along with that. The rest of the way, as we meet 10 feet or more, the rest of the way it's just in that one spot where it gets tight. And again, we'd rather not have to move 6th Street to gain 4 feet there, and we'd rather put the effort on the side that people should probably be walking on anyway, which would be the parking lot side.
Kevin, when the buses drop off, the bus people, they come in, they don't go around the stair to the front. There's a net.
Okay, so let me clarify that. So the buses will drop off in front of the building in these drop-off areas. Buses will queue and park along 6th Street so that when an event is over, they can just come right out, take their right-hand turn. So that one comment about buses isn't, we're not dropping people off back here. That's not favorable.
But there may be buses parked right against that curb.
Up here, yeah, if you can see where I'm pointing, yes.
Would they be parked at the area of the convention center where the pinch point is?
No. They will not park there because there's actually the operator had requested a little service area here for them to be able to, you can see this drive right here. This was something to let a quick drop-off, a delivery, this is the FedEx type truck, or a quick food truck that needs to get something up to the kitchen quick because our service is right here. And so the operator wanted to add something rather than having something come in directly from the back and have to come down to get to that point. So yeah, we would encourage people to definitely be on the parking lot side and not have to be walking past that area as well.
Well, while we're on the subject of pinch points, at the main entry of the building, what's shown in this drawing right now is an outline of the building itself, but if I'm reading this correctly, there's something of a platform in front of that entry and where you have to take a couple stairs up.
Yes.
To reach that. And I'll ask the question, do you know offhand the dimension between the sidewalk or even the tree well and the beginning of that stair platform? Because that looks like a very similar pinch point that is actually in a more prominent high-traffic area.
I will definitely say it's way more than 6 feet. I'm trying to say, do you think?
Well,
he's saying 14.
I'm looking at the landscape drawing.
What sheet?
LA 103B.
Okay. That was in your application packet, right?
Yes.
I could measure it.
Are you talking about
At the northwest corner, the main entry.
It's you can see it right here on your screen too.
Right.
It's this right here.
Is there any way we could?
Yes.
Yes. That's good.
Oh, a note to the left. Yep, so yep. You can hold right there. So in the bottom left of the screen.
Yeah, I see what you're pointing at.
And it's tough to see on the screen. On our drawing, we can see the doors into the building themselves, and using those as a scale. And looking at the renderings, those tree wells on Robinson are open grass compared to a flat grate. So people wouldn't be walking over those tree wells. That pinch point looks somewhere in the range of 6 to 10 feet. And that's at the main entry of the building, where if there's generally a good amount of circulation at that northwest corner, outdoor exhibits on 4th, you're going to have traffic coming from the main entry of the building around to that corner. I'd be concerned about that pinch point with the volume of people that would be there.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Nick Fairless with HFSD Landscape Architect Project. Just to give you an idea of scale, since there's no dimension obviously on this plan, as those the tree planting areas are 5 foot by 10 foot. So you can see from that line with the mouse pointer to that wall is probably 10 foot, and then that space from the tree grate to the edge of the amenity zone is 1 foot 3. So just a little bit more accurate dimension would be about 11 foot.
Okay.
You weren't talking about that pinch point between the column and looks like a retaining wall up on the top of the...
Yes, there. No, I wasn't referring to that, but...
I'm not following.
Oh, you had your arrow on it a second ago.
Yeah.
I just use that scale.
From that column to what, that dark line looks like a retaining wall down below it?
Yes.
And that dotted line between, that's the access for the people in wheelchairs, potentially?
Yes.
And that distance is, what do you think?
6 feet, probably. I mean, I'm guessing because I don't have it in front of me directly. But again, this is the main path of travel. It's hard to see the doors here. I know they're fairly kind of not shaded or
Okay. I've got a couple other questions. Sure. Before we get to comments. On the elevation drawings, there's a chain link fence enclosure for a generator.
inside the loading dock, yes.
It is inside, okay. That's what I wanted to confirm its location. That's on A504, just for reference. But that is in the loading dock behind the perforated metal panel screen. Okay. And then regarding the Portland cement plaster that's cladding the main exhibition hall, you had mentioned on the north and south, or I could tell from the elevations, the north and south facade, there was some attention to the joint layout and the articulation of that. Does that carry to the east facade of the exhibition hall as well?
The same pattern does not. There's just more of a vertical joint layout on the east side. Since it's actually kind of set back with the loading dock, there's an overhang canopy in front where the truck's back in, and then that steps back, and then you see the higher wall beyond. It is visible. I mean, you're right, it would be visible from the streets and other things, but we didn't treat it the same as the north and the south.
Because that's where the main sign that's on the east facade, at that corner, those coming together, you would have the angled pattern on one side of that corner and then a grid pattern on the other.
That's right.
That's what's currently
that is how it is currently. Yes.
Okay. And then you had mentioned the northwest corner as a drop-off area. Is that correct?
Let's see, this would actually show it fairly well. Maybe a different plan would be better, but you start to see the looks of a drive-through here. You can kind of make out the overhead or the dashed line, which would be the meeting rooms that are above. And we envision this as a very big event, the ability to open this up as a drive and let people get a covered drop-off. This is when you have your black tie affair event at the ballroom level, like a governor's ball or something. That's when you've got your additional operations people, valeting and directing traffic, and it's letting people come under this overhanged meeting space to get people up. So they would be utilizing this entry here, going straight up to the ballroom, something like that. This is not an everyday drive that people are trying to cross and all that kind of stuff.
Are there any type of temporary bollards planned to restrict that area during typical?
I think there's bollards, the removable ones.
Okay. Those were all my questions. Do we have any more questions?
I was just looking at the scale of that pinch point you identified. It looks like it's right at 8 feet. So I don't know if that's there's a scale right on that. So is that an issue? Or are you wanting at least 10 feet?
I plan on having a number of comments. For the time being, I was just asking questions about what that potentially would be. So,
but you feel okay? With what you heard?
No, I do have concerns about that pinch point that we can get into.
I have one question, and it's going back to that pinch point on the south side. You mentioned bus queuing, and this is a little bit of an operational question. Maybe it's not fully developed yet, but in the event that a large convention is being held and everybody is released at the end of the day, are they going to be going to that location where the buses are located to go to a bank of hotels, or will that be the buses will be brought around to the west side and everybody's going to load and unload?
Typically, the buses always come and pick up and drop off on the main side there. We don't want people trying to figure out where the buses are parked. And for a larger event, buses will probably queue in other spots. Maybe they're parking along 7th or in other areas in the city even, just to get them away for a larger event.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
This is kind of a crazy question, but I know there's a building in Dallas that has some reflectivity problems as it relates to the Nashert there. And since this building fronts in the west side, gets the heat load, and have you considered what that might do to the park and the people on that side of the building?
It's interesting you brought that up, because our subcommittee brought that up just last month or two when we met with them. That question was raised, and like I mentioned, we had high-performance glass specified, and so we reached out to our glazing manufacturer and posed the exact same question. And their response was a couple of things. There's certain sides of the multi-layered glass that the reflectivity should be on to help minimize that intensity that could occur when it comes back off, when it gets reflected back. And he said, I don't have it in front of me, but it was, it's either the second surface or the third surface of the inside that allows that. And then you need to have certain shading coefficients of your glass and all that stuff. And he said, you guys have picked about the best glass that we would recommend for that issue. Not to mention they're flat runs of glass, and going back to the Dallas one, the building's got a curvature to it where glass can hit at different concave and all that stuff to shoot off in different ways. I definitely know the issue there. So we feel strongly that there won't be an issue. I can't say 100% that it's going to be perfect out there. There could be times where it hits just right and may have some reflectivity, but it should not be an issue. That's a good question.
Are there any additional questions?
You said that you brought samples of materials. I was wondering what the perforated metal paneling looked like.
Yes, I can let my assistant get it. This was something we actually have been looking at in the last week or so, and have gone with a smaller pole pattern, perf pattern. Well, the hope is that this project goes out to bid at the end of the year, and construction would start after contractor's selected and all that stuff happens spring. So first quarter 2018. We think it's about a 2-year project, so roughly that same time, 2020.
I realize that the hole itself has been reduced in size, but the overall transparency is such that that particular panel, when you were bringing it over, it looked very transparent. It did not look like it was going to provide any level of screening from somebody that is a good distance away.
So we've gone back and looked at that as well. There's different percentages of openness with that, and so that panel I believe is a 40% openness ratio. They have a 30 and like a 23. And so we've settled that we think this is the right hole size, and we do think the corrugation also helps. Oddly enough, it creates kind of a different view when you're at an angle. You're right. Sometimes it does look straight on, sometimes it doesn't. But distance and things makes a difference. But we could definitely go back and look at a different percentage and some of that stuff, but this is where we're at today.
And what color, is it going to be that color also?
No, it's a darker color. We get what they give us off the line when they cut things.
Would you have a position right now in regard to reducing that to the 23 or 30% transparency?
I don't think we'd have a problem if that's something you guys would like us to do. This is the look we want as far as a perforated corrugated material. If you guys have a concern, we'd like it to be a less percentage, we don't have an issue with that.
When Laura holds it up, we can see her glasses, her eyebrows.
Well, but if she was back there and the thing's here, can you see her? Hardly any people's going to be walking up next to the fence. The pedestrian on the outside will be walking next to it, but the loading dock happens 80, 60 feet, beyond that.
I think one of the issues that's going to happen is that the outside daylight is going to start to affect that, especially at night. And you're going to have lights back there to illuminate your loading dock so that you're secure. And then on the outside of that, it's going to be darker, so it's going to be walking by a window. It's like walking by a window with a perforated screen. You're going to see the entire inside of the loading dock as you drive by at night.
I agree.
If it can be vetted and evaluated, that would be, I think, beneficial to the use.
We can absolutely do that.
Any other questions from the committee? Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the project? Well, I'd like to start by saying that this is a great project. And I appreciate the effort that has been put into this. I think it's going to be great for the city, great for downtown. Really appreciate a lot of the attention to detail with the massing of the building, the way it's laid out, with the site, with the landscaping. Certainly, even the east side, how that sidewalk and the landscaping on that side was addressed. Really appreciate viewing the building from all four sides in an urban context. I guess I'll start back with the pinch points, and right now this project is applying for a variance to be set back more than what is allowed by the guidelines, and the understanding and the reasoning for that, and the reason I think most people are on board with doing that is knowing the amount of traffic and the amount of circulation that's going to be happening around the building. And with that being said, it highlights these two pinch points as concerns, because you can have as much room as you want on 99% of the site, and then you have that one pinch point. That's where you'll have issues. For me personally, the pinch point by the main entry is actually more of a concern than on the south side. With addressing the sidewalk at the parking lot, I could see how people would stay on the south side of the street until they got to the intersection to cross. But the main entry, there's going to be a lot of people outside of that main entry, between the main entry and that northwest corner, and so that pinch point really seems troublesome to me.
Some of that stuff, I know the stairs and stuff were based off of trying to get the grades past that to really be as flat and level as we could be. I don't know if there's a way we could go back and look at adjusting any of that,
Sorry, if you don't mind, just we need to speak into the mics for the recording.
Like Kevin mentioned, this whole front area with the stairs and the walls was kind of the grading and slopes were kind of driving this. Our goal is to create a less than 2% slope in all directions. We could have kind of, I guess lack of better terms, warped some pavement areas to get up here without the stairs, but we felt keeping it flatter with the stairs and kind of creating a space, an interesting space, was worthwhile. With that being said, I think there's some options here, to get to that 10 foot, if that's what you're looking at, for a minimum.
Well, the 10 foot was noted for the south side. I'm hesitant to give an exact dimension of what would be needed here. I would think you guys would actually know better than me how many people would be in this area, not only using the convention center, but really walking up and down Robinson too. If I wasn't going to the convention and I was just walking by and that convention had something going on, I could be waiting there for a couple minutes to make my way through. So I hesitate to give a specific number. I otherwise would ask that area be revisited.
I agree. I think there's some options there that we can look at. I think we just need to sit down and take basically another stab at it and get it something that everybody's comfortable with.
I'm going to jump back to the plaster around the exhibit hall. Is there, would you have any position on taking that articulation around the east side as well?
I don't really think it would be a problem to do per se for us. I want to go back and look at it with our team to see if they feel that's something they really want for that side's look. I understand you're seeing a kind of a disconnect between the two sides, and the intent was obviously for the north and the south sides to be treated the same. That's why they got that look. But I don't think it would be a big issue if we went back to look at that again and propose something to share with you guys.
Are there any other comments or discussion? Would anyone like to take a stab at this?
Is it possible just to make a motion but then to revisit that pinch point issue, and as long as city staff is, we don't have any specific guidance on.
You could say with the condition that the main entrance stair be revisited to really pinch point.
Because we don't have any special language about high capacity sidewalks having or what requiring.
A high-intensity sidewalk is 10 feet. So I'll just throw that out there.
Yeah.
But I think, I see how it might be fulfilled.
I will make everyone aware that the staff's recommendation does include quite a number of conditions that address the items that were included in the staff report.
I also want to say before you motion about the south side stair. It's funny, I was so focused on that I didn't even look that closely at the main entrance stair situation. After the report went out, Populous and I had a good conversation about, once the sidewalks are not just added to the parking lot, but these are going to be fantastic sidewalks, right? They're going to be wide and smooth and tree-lined, and there's not going to be any sort of pedestrian outlet to the south side of the building, except at the corner of Robinson and Broadway. So once we talked through that, I was more convinced that that there were a lot of design things they could do to discourage people from just leaping across 6th Street. So I'll put that out there.
But we'd have to add a condition to address the main entrance.
Yes.
Okay.
And if you want to say, I don't know how strongly you feel about the plaster on the east side, if you want to say study it, or if you're going to say add it. I don't think I know what you're saying, I don't think would add much to the project personally, but
it's all in the details.
I just say just be specific if you're requiring it or if you're suggesting it. Because there's a difference.
So I move to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in section C and D of the staff report, with the conditions A through J. Can I say that to save myself some reading?
Do you want to include A?
Good point, yeah. So can I just say B through J, but then add the additional condition that the applicant increase the clear sidewalk width on the west side near the main entrance. And I guess I'll add another condition. How would I word that? That take a closer look at the visual impact of the corrugated metal.
Yes, that is perfect. That gives us some flexibility on the openness and the size and the shape, the geometry.
And then is it by default that these conditions would come back to staff for review, or does that need to be clearly stated as well?
No, they'll come back.
Okay.
To staff to review. Is that what I heard?
Main entrance stair be improved, the clear sidewalk dimension at the main entrance stair be improved and brought back to staff for review.
And the metal panel as well?
The metal panel be made more visually opaque and brought back to staff.
Does it count if, do I need to repeat what they said, or is that?
What about
the
articulation of the plaster?
Yes. I don't personally, but I guess I'm hearing. Yeah. How'd you put that?
Reviewing the articulation.
I mean, I agree it's a minor point. I think my concern was heard on that, and
Which
So, sorry, we're talking about the plaster articulation on the east facade.
Okay.
I'm not going to die on that hill to make that a requirement. I think my concern was heard, and
We'll bring it back to the team for sure.
Second. Okay. So that was a Harding-Ainsworth motion. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Application is approved with conditions.
We need a
sorry.
recommendation on the variances.
We're going to keep going.
Which nothing changed from our discussion. Nothing changed on those.
Well, okay, sorry.
Yeah, nothing changed.
So I make a motion that we provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment for a variance from items A through F.
Again, Harding-Ainsworth, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Thank you very much.
We thank you guys for all of your input too. It does mean stuff to us. Thank you.
Okay, that wraps up items for individual consideration. There is no other business. We've got a couple items administratively approved under communications. Is there any comments or questions on the administrative approval list? Comments from staff?
We have a meeting next month.
Great, that sounds great. Any
Not gonna
comments?
ask me what came in?
What came in for next month's meeting?
No.
No.
No. We're
No,
having a
I
meeting
don't want to
next
ask right now.
month. Should be an article in the paper today.
Okay. Any comments from committee members? Great. Our next meeting date is Thursday, November 17th, 2017. New applications must be submitted to staff by 4 p.m. Tuesday, October 17th, 2017. And we are adjourned. Thank you.